Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm your host, Enthros Campbell. The outbreak of COVID-19 worldwide has reshaped established patterns or ways of doing things. Now, that adjustment has extended to the education sector and will impact the Caribbean Examinations Council or CXC exams, which for this year is slated to begin a little later than previous years. Now, the CXC, as we know it, is a regional examining body that hosts examinations for secondary and post-secondary candidates in the English-speaking Caribbean and the Netherlands, Antilles, and Suriname. On today's program, we discuss the preparations for the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate, CSEC, and the Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examinations, CAPE. Our guest is Acting Chief Education Officer, Dr. Kasan Troupe. Dr. Troupe, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
We're so happy you could join us because I know the times are really, really busy for you. Right.
Yes.
Good. So I want to start with the fact that our CAPE and CSEC students have gone back to the classroom. How is that going?
Yes. Well, I can report proudly that it has been a very impressive start. Our principals have done a tremendous job partnering with the stakeholders on the ground, our parents, our teachers, our support staff, to make sure that the facilities are prepared. I can tell you, our media would have been out into the field. Our partners like the JTA and other members would have been out into the field, and we have gotten perfect reviews as it relates to the level of preparation on the ground to make sure that our students are safe. So all is well, and we are excited about what's going on right now.
Excellent. So students were able to all stay in their school. Nobody had to go to other schools.
Nobody had to go to any other school. I mean, what would have happened is that those cohorts that are very large, the timetabling style would have taken care of that. So some schools would not have had everybody in at the same time. So they would have grouped the students on a particular schedule, and you have people moving in from 10 to 12, for example, and from 12 to 2 and so forth. So there's a different and a mixture of methods that are being used on the ground to make sure that we respond to the gaps in the preparation for the exams.
Excellent. Now, not all students are out, right? How do we decide? Who decides who goes out and who stays home?
Well, I can tell you that most students are out. Preparations would have been made for those students and teachers who may have underlying conditions that would put them at greater risk for the COVID-19 virus. So for those persons, we have asked our school administrators to put systems in place to ensure that they are engaged. So for our students, online modalities will continue, of course, supported by our televised and radio programs. And of course, if they need reading materials, printed materials, we have asked that everything is packaged for those students free of cost. And of course, those teachers who may be troubled as well, we said to our principals, allow them to stay at home and continue the online version of the program, or even to get involved in preparation. So some teachers may not necessarily need to be engaged in the teaching, but they are engaged in the planning, because you can just imagine what is happening on the ground now. The common planning is very key to make sure that everybody has a lesson plan tied into the syllabus. And so some teachers are able to lead with that and to make sure that that is ready from a distance.
Right. So how was a refresher course? How was that designed? Because some persons would not have finished their syllabus and others would have. Talk to us about that.
Right. So it is going to be different according to school context. So based on where the students would have been in the preparatory period, the teachers will now do a refresher. So they will assess where the students are now in line with what they have been teaching on the virtual programs and on the mixed modalities. And then they will now pick up from there based on the information that they would have gleaned from the assessment. And then they will craft the intervention program for that. But for the most part, it should not be an extensive makeup period, because most of the students would have almost finished the syllabi before the disruption caused by COVID-19. But as you know, there are some amount of learning loss, so we have to make up for those as well.
Right. So when are the exams slated to start? Remind us, please.
Okay, so the CSEC exam should start July 13th to August 4th, and the CAPE will start July 13th to July 31st.
Right. So timetables already available?
Well, we have the master timetables have been shared already with our schools, and the individual timetables will be provided to the students as per usual.
All right. So students are going to be going straight to their schools for these exams, right?
Yes, they are assigned to their centers as per usual. But as you know, CXC has a protocol in place. In the event that a child cannot get to a center, they can report to any other center.
Okay.
Systems are in place to treat with that.
Yeah, right. Talk to us about the preparations for students who have underlying issues and teachers too.
Right. So for those students, as I said earlier, we will continue the mixed modality with them. So if they are home, they will continue with the online learning. They will get their printed packages, and of course, they will get their data support for those who may need data support, because this is a crisis and we cannot leave anybody behind. So we have said to our principals and teachers, do the personal assessment as per each case and provide the support for those. If the teachers need to be home, they have trouble with accessing the device or with the data, we say to our principals, provide the resource for that. So we have laptops in our schools, we have tablets in our schools that can be given on loan to these students. We have already given our directives on that. So those tablets that are in schools, those can be given on loan to our exam students and to other students who are already engaged in the online version of the program. Right. So, and the teachers, of course, will get their online support materials in partnership with their colleagues.
Right. Let's talk a little about the exams themselves. These are going to be written exams, right? They're not going to be using laptop or anything. They're going to be written exams.
Right. So the exam is going to be paper-based, and they will only do the paper one version of the exam. So they're accustomed to doing paper one and paper two. So under the crisis, the examining body would have modified this approach, of course, informed by psychometric practices. And so the students will only do the paper one version, which is the multiple choice, and it will be a paper-based exam.
But Doc, not all the students are going to be doing one paper. I understand that Spanish and French are going to be doing all of the papers. Why is that so? And tell us about that.
They will do the orals because that's a component of the exam. And for you, based on how the exam is graded, the SBAs would not be sufficient for the grades to be awarded. So the speaking and the listening and the conversation with the language, that's very, very important. And so that component remains a part of it. And as the psychometricians would have informed, that would have been necessary for us to award a fair grade.
So you're going to do the orals and the listening comprehension as well?
For the listening comprehension is done for the communication studies group, where in that exam, a piece is read to them, and they listen, and they take notes, and then they use their notes to formulate their responses in their written paper. Right. In the languages now, like the French and the Spanish and so, they will do a conversation is going to be a part of that. And of course, they will be read to and they will respond. So again, to have the pronunciations and the reflections and so, those are very important in grading those students.
All right, so there's going to be the oral paper, and there's going to be no listening comprehension, and then there's going to be a long paper with the essay and the dialogue and so on?
For the oral exam for the Spanish, yes, and for French and so, they're accustomed to 3 areas in that. And that is, they're going to do the passage. They're going to be reading a passage. Right. Right? They will be having the conversation. They are used to having a situation posted to them and they will respond. They are thinking of removing that component of the oral. Okay. So that is the only modification taking place. So they will have their conversation and they will do their reading, the passage to read, which is very important. Right.
But what about the other paper, the essay and the dialogue and the situation responses?
Right. So they will not, there's discussion taking place to finalize that. So they will not, under the oral, they may remove the situation component.
Yes.
Right, so that's the kind of modification that is taking place. Okay. But of course, in the written piece that they will do with their paper ones, and so the other aspect of the exam will be graded through those questions.
All right. Okay, we're going to take a break now. We come right back with more information on CSEC and K preparation. Stay with us. Welcome back to Get the Facts. We're talking about CXC and CAPE exams for this year. Our guest is Dr. Kasan Troupe, who is the Acting Chief Education Officer, of course, in the Ministry of Education. I want to talk a little bit now about the mental health of our students taking exam, Dr. Troupe. COVID would have had some kind of impact. Are we considering that, and what are we doing to help the students if they're so impacted?
Our students and our teachers would naturally be affected by this pandemic, as some persons call it a crisis. And so they have to be supported in their coping mechanism. So a part of our reopening plan spoke to the preparation for the social and emotional learning activities. So within our high schools, we are fortunate in Jamaica to have guidance counselors. Many of our high schools have 2 guidance counselors, some 3. In addition to that, in the ministry, we have our social workers, and each regional office has a set of guidance counselors and health and family life educators. So they have been working with the guidance counselors and the health and family life educators within the high schools to prepare psychosocial support for these children. So they will have empowerment, debriefing sessions before they start any kind of technical, clinical content matter concerning the exams. And prior to some of the schools resuming, a number of the children were engaged via the virtual modalities in empowerment sessions, debriefing sessions, conversation sessions, just for them to just talk about this, relax, and come up with coping strategies. And what was most impressive was the fact that children were able to share with each other how they have been coping. And you know the power of peer pressure and peer support. So we were able to pull on the peer support in those environments. Those sessions are also ongoing. We have asked in our manual that we sent out to our schools that this is done weekly, at least once per week, even for our teachers. A part of the challenge too is the adjustment to the haircut and the uniforms and so. And many of our principals in preparing our students psychologically relax those rules. So they are not preoccupied with cutting off the hair and pulling out of the braids. And we have found that that has helped the children to relax and be focused as well.
Right. As you said, we're not sure where this pandemic will take us. What do we have in place just in case? Because the Minister of Health is telling us that, we might see a second wave. What do you have in place just in case that happens?
Well, we work with our examining body. For us, in our classrooms, measures would have been put in place to treat with any kind of observation if persons, through our temperature checks, are observed to have high temperatures when they are checked. We have facilities to remove those persons, to do second and third checks, and of course, to get in touch with their families and to get them to the health centers for further review. So that is in place within our schools. So we have what we call quarantine areas within our schools. Now, if something happens nationally where there's a breakout or so, we now have to be guided by the Ministry of Health. It's now a health crisis. And the National Risk Reduction Instruction and Orders will take precedence at that time.
But if a child is coming for an exam and you test the temperature and it's high, but the child is able to finish his or her exam, would we allow that?
The health sector and the Ministry of Health will have carefully guided us to say we need to do repeated checks because there are several things that can lead to a high temperature. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is the virus. So we have to be very careful. That is why we have the nurses involved. And we have trained personnel involved to guide us. And the schools will get in touch with the health sector at the parish levels for further support. So we are not making any rush decision because the child's future is what is most important. And if it's so that the child can and is in a state to finish at the exam in a quarantine location, we support that.
Excellent. Doc, I'd like some tips for teachers who are preparing online classes. Because I'm thinking that you can't use the same method. Give us some tips as to how we should do it better. An online class versus a face-to-face class.
Well, the transition into the virtual space is a learning curve for all of our teachers. But we never had a choice in the matter. We had to just make the shift. COVID was here and we had to respond. But our teachers have been doing a marvelous job. So some of the things that we have encouraged them to do is to plan. Every good teacher plans. So in the same way you plan for a face-to-face, you have to plan for the virtual space because you have to get familiar with the technology. So we have to say, remember to create your own workspace. So you're working from home, you have to create that space. You have to make sure that it is free of any kind of distractions. You know, our students pick up on everything.
Yes.
You know, we ask them to make sure that they test their connections. And if it is that you may have unstable connections, what is the contingency? So we ask them to send things ahead. So you send the notes ahead, you send the PowerPoint ahead, you ask children to read ahead, so you can have a discussion, because the technology can be very impersonal sometimes. So you want to facilitate discussion in the space. So some of the tips we have said to teachers: send the work ahead, assign questions, assign a particular topic to a particular student or a group to facilitate the preparation for a discussion. Use your claps and your reinforcement.
Yes.
Use humor, you know, make sure that you bring alive the humanity in the classroom. It can be very lonely, you know, and so make sure that your lesson is also speaking to the learning styles of our students.
As we wrap though, we are ready, the government is ready, the schools are ready. Talk to us, give our students some tips as they prepare now for the CSEC and CAPE exams.
Can I tell you the reviews from the children? They are excited about being back, and they would know how to prepare for the exam because they have been doing this. So we have said to them, read, recite, review. And you get into your peer groups and you ask questions and you get an opportunity to give feedback. Your peers can give you the feedback to say whether you missed a little point here or you could add this here and so. And the more you engage with the content, the more you can remember, the more you can recall, the more you can apply, you know? So we have said to our students, put aside specific timelines. Study is not just random. You have to set a timetable, you have to set a schedule, you have to sleep, right? And make sure that you're fully rested so you can assimilate. You have to make sure that you eat appropriately, right? So your body can treat with the study period and the anxiety surrounding the exam.
Yes, yes.
You know, so we have asked our students to just apply all those kind of tips as per the normal course of things.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so very much, Dr. Troupe. This has been Get the Facts. Our guest was Dr. Kasan Troupe, Acting Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. The CXC exams are the basic requirement for tertiary education in the region and abroad. As our children prepare, let us support them in whatever way we can. And students, we remind you to observe the necessary safety procedures. Wash your hands regularly or use a hand rub. Wear your mask and keep a safe distance and prepare well for your exam. We wish you all the very best. We know you can do it. Until next time, when the Get the Facts brings you, as always, more pertinent and important information. I'm Inthrus Campbell. Thanks for watching and take good care.